Studios, the ausbiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Welcome to the COB. I'm Danny Akuye, along with
Andrew Gagan. Yeah, that'd be me. Good to be here on a Monday, Danny. And look, we haven't done very well. We ended up pretty much flat.
I know.
It was a good start to the day. We were ready or set, in fact, to push to another record. However, as you can see there, 11:30, some data came out.
Housing approvals.
Well, it's actually inventories.
Oh, that's right. They were really bad, weren't they?
They were. In fact, they dropped 1.7%, but it was mining inventories down in the December quarter 5.5%. Yeah, so that hit that market sentiment. Obviously concerned because we do get the GDP read on Wednesday, and maybe reading some things into that might be weaker than expected.
It's definitely, there's a lot of softening of expectations going on there, and possibly our market treading water today, and a lot of that has to do with these huge, well, you've got the Powell speaking this week at Congress, you've got GDP here, you've got the two sessions in China, obviously setting their economic agenda, so as well as the jobs data out in the US on Friday. So market probably deciding to, well, sit a little bit from an index level on the what was I saying, on the fence. Now let's go to the three themes, and I'll run with the first one because it is my terrible play on words. Dubba dubba don't, for those that know yubba dubba do, old enough to remember.
Reference. You're going to have to explain that though, aren't you, with Dubba, what's going on there today?
Yeah, so basically I had Claude Walker on to discuss what is going on with Dubba, to the extent that what are the red flags for a company that could potentially lead to this Dubba situation, which is basically, there's been funds that have gone missing. $26.6 million has actually gone missing, and I think the CEO has been stood down. So it doesn't smell good, Andrew, and I think the stock is currently in suspension as a result of that.
Yeah, feel for the poor investor that's ridden the stock as a result, and yeah, clearly a lot of questions to be asked in regards to Dubba. Now, Danny, gold glitters. Well, it certainly does at the moment, doesn't it? Because prospects perhaps, well, there was some short covering going on Friday, I think, out of the States. Plus, of course, expectations that maybe rate cuts are coming sooner than expected. Oh, it's wishful thinking, isn't it? But we did see the gold price jump higher to it, close to a 2-month high, in fact. And as a result, we've seen all the gold stocks do very well today.
Yeah, absolutely. They were doing extremely well. And also these takeover tailwinds just to continue to flow. So a Japanese firm has made a bid for Genex. So just again, this ongoing takeover activity. And I was reading a summary, Andrew. It's quite staggering how many companies are being bid for at the moment. Hopefully it'll end, otherwise we won't have
Well, we were making that joke earlier that there's going to be nothing left in Australia, is there? Particularly where the Australian dollar is, they're all looking fairly attractive at this point.
Absolutely. Now let's have a look at some of the sectors and see what has been doing well. And this one surprised me. REITs have been on a bit of a tear, and it doesn't have Goodman Group, but I do know that Goodman Group was very, very strong earlier on today, but we have had that sector in the green.
Taking a look at utilities, see how they're tracking today, mostly in the red, as you can see there.
And let's have a look at information technology. And we did see a green on screen there, particularly with WiseTech Global and Technology One. Also, NextDC and Xero was up. And it's just interesting, Xero has copped a couple of broker upgrades recently.
Also, NextDC reports there that they're on the acquisition trail at the moment as well.
I tried to get something out of the CEO, Craig Scroger, the other day, and he said, oh yes, there's lots of activity in the sector at the moment. Little did I know that they were on the hunt. I thought someone might be hunting for them.
No, I think they're big enough now. They're the ones doing the acquiring. Now, elsewhere...
Let's have a look at some corporate news, because it is quite busy. Fletcher Building chairman Bruce Hassel has brought forward his exit from the embattled building materials company, and shares are falling another 1.9% today.
Yeah, no, we're just talking about XTC. That was in the Fin review today, just as far as it saying that the group's looking to acquire a portfolio of data centres of Global Switch, in fact.
And Downer EDI has put forward its defence against its pending shareholder class action, saying the accounting irregularities were in part related to the auditor KPMG, and those shares down by about 1.2%.
Danny, you were talking about Genex Power. Yeah, M&A alive and well, certainly in the local market. Those shares up 32% as a Japanese utility looks to take it out.
Absolutely. And Lake Resources are down by 10%. And that's after announcing plans to cut 50% of its non-core staff as the lithium sector continues to grapple with a rout in the price of the battery material.
Yet that was the odd man out today because most of those lithium stocks are actually higher.
I know, they were doing well. I think one of the bankers has said that they see a turnaround there in the lithium sector.
Or, is now the words we've seen the bottom. That's what he's saying, right?
Yes.
I don't know, turnaround? Well, yeah.
Seen the bottom, okay. Oh dear. Now let's move on to our guest, our special Monday guest, as always, COB. For the COB is Josh Gilbert from eToro. Josh, hi, happy Monday. Welcome to ausbiz Today.
Thanks, guys. How are we?
Good, good, good. Well, I had to check out your LinkedIn profile and you are talking about Bitcoin. How could we not talk about Bitcoin? Because it just keeps on powering ahead, doesn't it, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, look, it really has sort of stole the show in the last sort of week or two. It kind of keeps defying expectations, really. We sort of reached as high as about 64,000 US dollars last week. You know, we're really eyeing now that sort of all-time high in US dollars of around sort of 68, 69,000. And I think where we are in terms of this cycle, and it's slightly different to what we've had in the past, is it feels like the start rather than the end as we get sort of close to an all-time high. Usually when we're sort of getting to an all-time high, you know, it's towards the back end of a bull run, whereas this feels like just the sort of the start of it. You know, we're seeing huge interest in these sort of Bitcoin ETFs, which are, you know, garnering massive trading volumes, billions of dollars in inflows. You've got sort of the institutional capital that's sort of really coming in. We've seen the sort of the retail money come into markets. Now it's institutions sort of catching up. And what we're seeing is that we're seeing some of the biggest financial institutions in the world, you know, your Fidelities, your BlackRock, they're buying up Bitcoin and other crypto assets by the bucket load. And ultimately that's what's sort of driving, you know, Bitcoin at the moment is, you know, we're seeing a big squeeze on supply. We've got the Bitcoin halving coming up in less than you know, a month or so now, towards the sort of the middle of April, which is only going to sort of, you know, cut supply further. We're going to see that increased scarcity, and we're also not seeing Bitcoin move as well. So what I mean by that is that about 70% of all Bitcoin in circulation has not moved in the last sort of year. It's stayed in wallets, addresses, it stayed on exchanges. So that means that there's just not enough Bitcoin to sort of go around for the amount of interest that we're sort of, you know, really seeing as well. So look, like I said, I think this is the beginning rather than the end, and it's going to be a really exciting couple of months. But, you know, it feels like we're not too far away from that all-time high.
Josh, does what we're seeing in the crypto market simply underline what we're seeing more broadly at the moment in FOMO?
I was going to ask the same thing.
It is well and truly back. You look at everything, all those assets are heading in that direction up at the moment. Look at the records tumbling across the globe in terms of the equity markets at the moment. We were just talking about lithium, for heaven's sake. It's back, the price going up, as are the stocks. What are your thoughts? And does that maybe make you a little nervous about what you're seeing?
Yeah, look, I think absolutely. Look, I mean, it's hard to not maybe feel a little bit nervous when you've got all these assets towards sort of record highs. You know, it almost does feel a little bit sort of frothy. You know, in that sense, risk assets have sort of been on fire. If we look at the S&P 500, rallied 24% since October. Annualizing this year, you know, about 40%. You know, that's, you know, not been seen since I think the late 1950s. So, you know, it's all maybe getting to the point of saying, okay, are we due a pullback? I think so. I think maybe stocks are, if we got a pullback right now, you sort of maybe wouldn't, you know, you wouldn't think twice about it sort of coming in. Like I say, crypto, I think, has a few more catalysts than maybe markets right now, than sort of more broadly in terms of stocks. With stocks, we've sort of kind of got the end of what is, you know, the end of now what has been a really good sort of tech earnings season. 80% of all companies in the S&P 500 beating expectations. We've had this AI optimism coming through, of course, NVIDIA once again, just sort of continuing to sort of lead the way there. And we've also had rate cut expectations sort of stay firm. But I think in terms of, you know, upcoming risks, I think we've got a big march ahead. we've got quite a lot of political events coming up as well. Just this week alone, we've got sort of the largest number of presidential primaries. I think that's tomorrow as well. So I think as earnings season comes to an end, we maybe shift away from looking at corporate news and we maybe focus towards, back on macro again. And I think there'll be one eye on politics. There'll be one eye on inflation again. And obviously we've got the Fed rate decision as well, in March as well. So I think that changes slightly. I think, crypto assets are maybe, set up maybe slightly better with stronger catalysts. We've got an Ethereum upgrade coming very soon. We also have, like I said, the Bitcoin halving coming up as well. So in terms of risk assets, I think crypto is maybe slightly better placed. I think we've got a bit more risk to the downside for stocks that are looking, like I say, a bit toppy at the moment.
Josh, before everybody goes out and fills themselves to the absolute gunnels in Bitcoin ETFs, how do investors risk adjust it? So, like, if you're looking at a portfolio, is it a classic thing of you just put some in there rather than just saying sell all your equities and just buy Bitcoin and Ethereum?
Yeah, look, I think it's still really important to get that, even as we're sort of getting towards maybe a mature asset class here, over the last 2 years, it's still very clear that this is a high risk asset class. It's still very volatile and it has a history of obviously wild price fluctuations. So although we are in this situation right now where we are seeing, huge numbers, we're getting close to those record highs. We even have sort of, your meme coin sort of coming back into the picture as well. That's sort of kind of the focus at the moment. They've seen, huge numbers come through in the last few days, the likes of Dogecoin, Shiba, they're up sort of 100%. So, when we're getting back to that scenario again, you mentioned FOMO. I think it's really important just to sort of try and take emotions out of it. And really importantly, if we're looking at a portfolio balance, is sort of really putting into crypto assets, a small portion of your portfolio. Again, it depends on an investor's sort of risk appetite, of course, but you're not sort of really going to be wanting to sort of put a huge amount of exposure into an asset class that obviously does have a high risk profile if you're a low risk investor. So I think it's about balance. I think it's about understanding your sort of that long term view, but also understanding as well that, like I say, yes, we're having a good time at the moment, and we're seeing these prices sort of move very quick to the upside. But it wasn't that long ago that we also had prices moving very significantly to the downside as well. So just understanding all of that is really important when allocating crypto assets to the portfolio.
Yeah, Josh, does remind me still though when perhaps the investor goes down to the casino, pushes all their chips onto the table, they're playing a game of poker, go all in. What have I got to lose? Everything, really. But of course, there's always an upside. Hey, mate, always great to catch up with you. Thanks so much for joining us, and me, Toro.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week. Cheers.
We have a Shiba Inu in the neighbourhood.
What do you mean?
The dog. Yeah. So it's like, oh, you've got a Shiba Inu. And how do I know that? Because of obviously all those coins.
All right, let's get on to our stock of the day. What's Downer EDI? We've been talking about that obviously off the back of its latest moves, just as far as having a go at KPMG. This all stems from those accounting irregularities that transpired certainly last year. The share price suffering, but took a bit of a bounce, in fact, just recently off the back of its latest results. So let's get the experts' view. Kai Chen from MPC Markets and David Lane from Ord Minnett cast their eye across the stock.
But with earnings seasons, they actually reported fairly strong in terms of their net profit, so their margins are actually increasing. So that's why after the reportings, they've had a decent jump in their share price. So I think given that taking out the class action, I think it's actually reported quite well. Yeah, I would probably hold on to the stock.
They're probably fairly fully valued at current levels. They're trading on a PE of about 21 times, but consensus forecasts are that earnings will rise by about 40% in the next 12 months and by another 13% in financial year 25. So the expectations are that the future PE will decline as earnings rise. So, and that's partly due to the company having new management, cleaning it up, that cost out program. So I think there is positivity in the share price, but probably where they're at the moment, I'd be holding as well.
All right, that's the view of Downer EDI. Now, just a reminder, we want to hear from you so we can better inform you. This is a subscriber survey, which is, you've got until, in fact, March the 13th. Now, Danny, there's a good reason to do this, isn't there?
Absolutely, and as they say, you've got to be in it to win it. And in this case, the deal has been sweetened and someone is going to win a managed investment portfolio from MPC Markets worth $5,000. And there are other prizes too, so just go to ausbiz.co/survey24.
All right, well, let's wrap up the day, take a look at the winners and losers thus far. And these are the leaders. BrainChip having a bit of a tear of a day there. Saw a lot of movement in the resource stocks, some up, some down. Certainly large miners, they were down. But Life 360, we had some broker upgrades with the stock too off the back of its stellar results that were perceived by the market there on Friday. Chalice Mining leading some of the goldies higher along with Regis Resources. Absolutely, and let's have a look at the laggards. And Lake Resources letting go, as we've said, of 50% of their non-core workforce, that off about 10%, Imogen off 6%. Pro Medicus, a bit of profit taking moving in, sending those shares off by 3.7%, and a Fortescue and Cleanaway off by just over 3%. In the smalls, and Genix Power, that's given that takeover offer from the Japanese J-Power company there. Bougainville Copper, interesting one that is on the move again. As I was mentioning, a lot of movement there, particularly in the resources and also energy space. And let's have a look at some of the small cap losers. Argosy Minerals off by 12.5%. Drone Shield, I think that was up last week, wasn't it, when they reported? Results.
So they're off by about 11%. There we see Lake Resources again, and Legacy Iron Ore off by about 9.6%. And then we have a Tower also off by about 9%. Now let's have a look, and I don't think anything is happening. It's very quiet overnight. But
well, it's maybe later in the week where we get some further data.
Absolutely.
So,
actually, I think
overnight.
there's quite a lot of US companies reporting, but otherwise, let's have a look in terms of tomorrow, what's going on, because we have a bit of a full day, don't we? We've got Australian balance of payments, new vehicle sales, and looking then...
Yeah, the stateside, ISM services, that'll be interesting to see how that's panning out at the moment. Also the factory orders and the Cation services PMI in China.
Yes, and let's do a final recap of the market and see where we have closed. Oh, look, Andrew, it's so
flattish, but down ever so slightly.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at the ASX 200 down by about 10 points, or just over 0.1%. Well, that's it for today, but we will be here bright and early tomorrow morning.
Get right across it, everything stateside and beyond, and what's happening in markets. Join us tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, have a great evening.
Have a great evening.